On a quiet afternoon spent fishing with his daughter, a black mechanic witnesses a private jet plummet from the sky and crash into the lake right before their eyes. Without a moment's hesitation, he dives in, kicks open the door, and pulls an unconscious woman from the wreckage just seconds before the plane explodes. What he doesn't know is that the woman he just saved is the CEO of the very company that fired him 7 years ago. What happens next will unravel long-buried truths, heal old wounds, and rewrite both of their lives forever. Before we dive deeper into this story, let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories every day. The surface of Cedar Falls Lake looked like glass that afternoon, still, silver, almost sacred in its quiet. A lone fishing line cut through the reflection, trembling slightly with the breeze. Marcus Johnson sat on the wooden pier beside his 8-year-old daughter Emma, both sharing the same deep brown skin and calm, steady eyes that reminded him of Sarah, his late wife, their tackle box between them, a half-empty thermos of lemonade sweating in the sun. Emma dangled her bare feet over the edge. "Dad," she said softly, "do you think Mom can see us from up there?" Marcus hesitated, eyes on the float bobbing in the water. "If heaven has a view of this lake," he said, "I'd bet she's laughing at how bad I am at catching fish." Emma giggled, the sound light and pure. "She'd say you talk too much and scare them away." He smiled. The wind lifted her curls, black in the sunlight, her brown skin glowing softly against the silver lake, and for a fleeting moment, life felt normal again, simple, forgiving. Then somewhere high above the pines came the roar. It began as a distant hum, low, mechanical, out of place among the cicadas and rippling reeds. Marcus looked up, frowning. The hum became a growl. The growl turned into a scream. A plane, small corporate jet, maybe a test craft. Its silver wings cut the clouds like razors, but one wing dipped sharply, unnaturally. Black smoke poured from the right engine. The sound fractured the peace of the lake, echoing off the water like thunder. "Daddy!" Emma cried, pointing. "It's falling." The plane spiraled downward, twisting in a sickening arc. For a split second, sunlight flashed off the fuselage, revealing the logo painted across it, Skytech Aviation. Marcus froze, his chest tightened. He knew that name too well. "Emma, stay here." His voice was calm, steady, practiced. "Don't move, sweetheart. No matter what happens, you stay right here, you hear me?" Her eyes widened. "Daddy, no," but he was already moving, sprinting down the pier, boots pounding wood, heart hammering. The jet clipped the tree line and vanished behind a plume of rising smoke. A heartbeat later, the impact shook the earth. A blast of air rolled across the lake, scattering birds into the sky. Marcus dove into the water. The lake swallowed him whole, cold, heavy, unrelenting. He kicked hard, arms cutting through the murk toward the column of bubbles ahead. Through the haze he saw it, the wreckage settling on the silty bottom, metal torn open like a wound. Air hissed out in thick clouds of silver. Inside the shattered cockpit, someone moved. Marcus's lungs screamed for air, but he pushed forward, gripping the frame, cutting his hands on jagged aluminum. The glass was spider-webbed but intact. He grabbed a rock from the lakebed and slammed it against the window. Once, twice, the third hit cracked it enough for him to rip the edge away. The pilot's seat was empty. In the passenger seat, a woman. Her hair floated around her face like dark seaweed. Her eyes were closed, head slumped forward against the harness. Marcus wedged his shoulder against the door, braced his feet, and pulled with everything he had. Metal groaned. A rivet snapped, the door tore open in a rush of bubbles. He wrapped an arm around her waist and kicked for the surface. The world above exploded into light and air. Marcus gasped, dragging the woman toward shore. Smoke drifted across the lake. Behind him the jet groaned and sank deeper. Then came the second explosion, muffled underwater thunder. A surge of heat brushed his back as flames rolled across the surface like liquid fire. He pulled her through the shallows, onto the muddy bank. "Come on," he panted, laying her flat. Her face was pale, lips blue. He tilted her head back, checked her airway, pressed his hands to her chest. 1, 2, 3. His voice trembled with every compression. Emma's distant voice carried from the dock. "Daddy, is she alive?" "Stay there," he shouted. Never stopping. "Stay right there, baby." 30 compressions, 2 breaths. Again. Nothing. Come on, he whispered, more to himself than to her. Don't you quit on me. He pressed harder, tears mixing with the lake water dripping from his chin. You're not dying here. Not today. Then cough. A single violent gasp of air. She convulsed, water spilling from her mouth. Her body jerked once, twice, then she began to breathe. Marcus sat back, trembling, soaked, watching her chest rise and fall. Sirens wailed in the distance. He could hear the volunteer fire trucks from the nearby town already tearing down the dirt road. The woman's eyes fluttered open, confused, glassy, unfocused. You're safe, he said, catching his breath. You're okay. She tried to speak, but no sound came out. Then she slipped into unconsciousness again. By the time the paramedics arrived, the wreckage burned in the middle of the lake like a floating funeral pyre. Reporters were already gathering at the perimeter. Cameras flashed as the EMTs lifted the woman onto a stretcher. Sir, are you hurt? One of them asked. Marcus shook his head. She's the one who needs help. You saved her life. He didn't answer. His eyes followed the stretcher until it disappeared into the ambulance. Name? Another paramedic asked, pen poised. Marcus Johnson. And hers? I don't know, he said, but something in his tone faltered. A memory was clawing its way out of the dark. The logo, the sleek corporate jet, the fine-cut business suit beneath the survival blanket. When the sheriff walked over with a clipboard, Marcus was sitting on a rock near the water, arms draped over his knees. Emma sat beside him, wrapped in a blanket too big for her, staring at the rising smoke. Hell of a thing you did, the sheriff said. Pulled her out yourself. Marcus nodded. You're lucky you weren't cooked alive when that thing blew. She's lucky too. Name's Catherine Morrison, CEO of SkyTech Aviation. Marcus's blood ran cold. The sheriff didn't notice. She'll owe you her life, that's for sure. Marcus said nothing. The name echoed in his skull like a gunshot. Morrison, Richard Morrison's daughter. The man who had destroyed everything he loved. He didn't wait for the cameras. When the news vans began to arrive, Marcus packed up the fishing rods, grabbed Emma's hand, and slipped through the trees toward the dirt road. He told the sheriff he needed to get the kid home, that he'd give a full statement later. The truth was, he couldn't breathe under the weight of that name. Emma trotted to keep up, clutching her blanket around her shoulders. Daddy, everyone's talking about you, she said. They said you saved that lady from a plane. I just did what anyone would do, he muttered. But nobody else jumped in. Marcus stopped walking. He turned toward her, kneeling so their eyes met. Sweetheart, sometimes doing the right thing doesn't make you a hero. It just means you were there when someone needed you. She nodded, though she didn't really understand. Her small fingers found his, and they walked on together through the rustling pines until the lake was out of sight. That night, the town glowed with a strange excitement. The local news looped the story every half hour. Cedar Falls mechanic saves CEO in fiery lake crash. A reporter stood on the dock, gesturing toward the burned wreckage behind her. At the edge of town, in a weathered cabin with a tin roof and a small porch light that flickered when the generator hiccuped, Marcus switched off the TV. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Emma sat cross-legged on the couch, coloring in a book. Will that lady be okay? She asked. He looked at her, then at the framed photograph on the shelf above the fireplace. Sarah, smiling in her pilot's jumpsuit, arm around a much younger Marcus. I think so, he said quietly. She'll live. Outside, rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavier, drumming against the roof like distant applause. Marcus stood by the window, watching the shadows of the trees sway in the lightning. His reflection stared back at him, older than he remembered, eyes hollow from years of carrying ghosts. He rubbed the scar on his forearm, the one that hadn't healed right since the accident 7 years ago. He could still hear the explosion from that day. He could still smell the burning fuel, feel the sting of paperwork branded operator error. And now fate had dragged the daughter of the man responsible for it all straight into his arms. Emma had fallen asleep on the couch by the time he stepped outside. The air was cool, the rain slowing to a mist. He sat on the porch steps, elbows on his knees, staring at the darkness over the lake. From here, the crash site was invisible, but the smell of smoke still lingered in the wind. He thought of Catherine Morrison lying unconscious in the hospital, of the company her father built on lies, of the career and family that had been buried with Sarah's coffin. Maybe, he told himself, saving her didn't mean forgiveness. Maybe it was just reflex, one more thing his conscience refused to let die. But deep down, he knew better. Somewhere beneath the grief and the anger, a door had opened, a door he'd kept locked for 7 years. And behind that door something was stirring. A truth, long buried, waiting for the sky to fall again. 7 years earlier, before the silence, before Cedar Falls, before the guilt had a name, there was light. Morning light poured through the hangar windows at SkyTech Aviation, burning through the fog that clung to the runway like breath on cold glass. Inside, the smell of metal, oil and ozone filled the air. Sparks danced from a welding torch in the distance. The prototype SX-700 gleamed under fluorescent light like a promise made of steel. Marcus Johnson walked beneath its wings, clipboard in hand, safety glasses hanging from his collar. He looked like a man who believed in things, precision, integrity, the impossible symmetry of flight. "Morning, Chief," called Tom Brennan, his supervisor, older, grizzled, half a cigarette tucked behind his ear. "How's our golden bird today?" Marcus ran a hand along the hydraulic panel. Still bleeding pressure at level 3 actuation. The right systems fluctuating under high stress. "We're not ready for a test flight." Tom sighed. "You said that last week, and I'll say it again next week if I have to." Marcus replied, "The math doesn't lie. At full altitude, one misread valve could drop the tail pressure 20%, that's unrecoverable. Richard wants it airborne by Friday." Tom warned, glancing around the hangar. "There's a showcase with the investors, then he can fly it himself," Marcus muttered. Tom smirked, but didn't laugh. The tension between engineers and executives was as old as the company. But this time felt different. This time, corners weren't just being cut, they were being erased. Later that afternoon, Marcus stood in the glass conference room on the 5th floor, the kind that smelled of money and politics. Across the table sat Richard Morrison, the CEO, silver hair, immaculate suit, the kind of man who measured people in profit margins. Beside him was his daughter, Catherine Morrison, then the company's newly promoted chief technical officer. Marcus had only met her twice. Sharp eyes, engineer's posture, the rare executive who listened before speaking. Richard tapped a pen against the table. "Marcus, the SX-700 program is bleeding cash. We need results, not another round of tests." "With respect, sir," Marcus said carefully, "you're asking me to sign off on a system that's not safe. I'm not refusing progress, I'm preventing a funeral." Richard's eyes hardened. "Hyperbole doesn't suit you." "It's not hyperbole if it's true," Marcus replied, sliding a folder across the table. "Valve drift reports, actuator fatigue data, fluid leakage tests, all point to the same conclusion." Catherine glanced at the papers, brow furrowing. "He's right about the drift patterns, Dad. If the hydraulics fail mid-ascent," Richard raised a hand, cutting her off. "SkyTech was built on risk. You think the Wright brothers waited for guarantees? You sign that report, Johnson. We proceed with flight test number 6 next week." "I won't sign," Marcus said simply. A long silence stretched across the glass room. The city shimmered in the windows behind them, tall, uncaring. Richard leaned forward, voice low. "Then I'll find someone who will." That night, Marcus stayed late, walking the hangar floor after everyone had gone. The SX-700 rested under floodlights, magnificent and menacing all at once. He placed a hand on the fuselage, as if touching a sleeping animal. He thought of Sarah, her warm brown skin and bright eyes steady as the horizon. His wife had always said airplanes were more honest than people, they either worked or they didn't. She was one of the company's best test pilots, brave to the point of foolishness, her laughter echoing even over the roar of engines. She had believed in SkyTech the way some people believed in religion. When she walked into the hangar that night, her flight jacket slung over one shoulder, Marcus felt the day exhale. "You're still here," she said, smiling. "I told you, they're not paying you enough to haunt this place." He smiled back, though his chest ached. "We're not ready for Friday's test, the system's still unstable." She stepped closer, eyes soft. Then tell them that again. I have. They won't listen. Sarah's gaze shifted to the plane. If they go ahead, someone has to be on board who knows what to look for. No, Marcus said immediately. Don't even think about it. Marcus, I said no, you've got Emma's school recital next week. She needs her mom there. Sarah reached for his hand. And those engineers up there, they need you here. You can't protect everyone, honey. He looked at her like a man trying to memorize the shape of sunlight. Promise me you won't fly it. She didn't answer. She just kissed his cheek and whispered, get some sleep, stubborn man, before walking out into the hum of the night. He never saw her alive again. The morning of the test flight was blindingly clear. Blue skies, no wind, perfect conditions for disaster. Marcus arrived at dawn, pacing the hangar, dialing his supervisor again and again. Tom, stop it, don't let them fly. The system's still bleeding pressure. Marcus, Tom said, voice strained. Orders came from the top. Sarah volunteered. She said she wanted to prove you wrong. The words hit like shrapnel. He ran to the runway, shouting for anyone who would listen. But the jet was already taxiing, sunlight flashing off its polished wings. Sarah, he screamed. His voice vanished beneath the roar of the turbines. The SX-700 accelerated, lifted and climbed. For a moment it was beautiful, silver cutting through blue, a dream defying gravity. Then the tail shuddered. Marcus froze, his stomach turned to ice. He saw the hydraulic system fail in his mind before it happened in the sky. The right wing dipped, the nose dropped. Come on, pull up, he whispered. Come on. The jet rolled once, twice, then spiraled into the horizon. The explosion was silent at first, then the sound reached him, a hollow boom that broke something inside his chest forever. The next week blurred into funeral flowers and boardroom whispers. Skytech's lawyers moved faster than the grief. The official report blamed technical oversight. Then the documents changed. His name appeared in bold under lead engineer, safety review. Marcus confronted Richard Morrison in his office. You forged my signature, he said, voice shaking. Richard didn't deny it. You're a convenient fall guy, Marcus. The company can survive one engineer's mistake. It can't survive negligence at the top. Marcus slammed his hands on the desk. You killed 4 people, including my wife. Richard's expression never changed. We all lost someone. Don't make this harder than it already is. You destroyed every warning I sent. You buried the truth. I protected what I built. Marcus wanted to leap across the desk. Instead he walked out. His badge deactivated within the hour. By morning security escorted him off the premises. Within a week, the newspapers carried the story. Engineer's error causes fatal Skytech test crash. No law firm would take his case. He received anonymous death threats online. His mortgage defaulted. Friends stopped calling. When the insurance payout came, it wasn't enough to cover Sarah's funeral. He sold the house. He packed Emma's clothes into a single duffel bag. They left the city before dawn, the skyline shrinking in the rearview mirror like a place that had never belonged to them. Cedar Falls was supposed to be temporary, a small town that didn't ask questions, where people judged you by your work, not your past. Marcus opened a repair shop, fixed tractors, lawnmowers, anything that needed mending. At night, when Emma was asleep, he would sit by the window and draw. Blueprints, designs, things that might have saved her if he'd been braver. Sometimes he dreamed of Sarah standing at the edge of a runway, wind tearing through her hair, looking back at him. She would mouth something he couldn't hear over the roar of engines. Then she'd vanish into the clouds. He always woke up before the crash. 7 years later, the world would call him a hero for saving Catherine Morrison, the daughter of the man who had ruined him. But on the night of the accident, sitting in his dimly lit cabin, Marcus finally understood the cruel symmetry of fate. The same company that had taken his wife had now delivered into his hands a woman who carried her father's name. He stared at the old photo of Sarah one more time and whispered, I tried to warn them. Outside, thunder rolled far away, like the echo of an engine tearing the sky apart. The story hit the morning news before the sun had fully risen. Small-town mechanic saves corporate CEO in miraculous lake rescue. That was the headline plastered across every screen from Cedar Falls to Austin. By 8 a.m., the diner on Main Street had a line out the door, not for pancakes, but for gossip. Every booth hummed with it. "Did you hear, that guy up by the lake pulled a lady straight out of a burning plane? They say she's some big shot billionaire from Skytech." Skytech? Like the Skytech? Marcus heard it all through the glass when he stopped for coffee. Heads turned, whispers rippled. Someone held up a phone showing his picture, him shirt torn, soaked, kneeling beside the woman on the shore. The shot must have been taken by a bystander before the smoke cleared. He lowered his cap and walked out without a word. At home, Emma was on the porch steps, clutching a newspaper almost bigger than her. "Daddy, look, they wrote about you," she said. Her smile was bright enough to hurt. Marcus set his coffee down and gently took the paper. There it was again, his name in bold next to the words "local hero." Beneath it, a photo of the lake glimmered like glass, and in the corner, the faint outline of an ambulance. He stared at the picture, jaw tight. "That's enough of that," he murmured, folding the paper. Emma's face fell. "Aren't you happy, Daddy? You saved her." He forced a smile, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Sometimes, sweetheart, being noticed isn't always good." By noon the town's mayor called. "Marcus, we'd love to honor you at Friday's assembly. Maybe give a little speech at the elementary school. The kids could use a hero." "I'm no hero," Marcus said. "Well, maybe not to you, but the rest of us think otherwise. What you did, I just did what anyone would do. Most folks wouldn't risk their lives for a stranger." Marcus's silence was his answer. He hung up politely, staring at the phone long after the line went dead. That afternoon, the repair shop filled with customers, more than usual. People wanted oil changes they didn't need, tune-ups that could have waited. They wanted to shake his hand, take selfies, ask questions. "What was she like? Did you see the plane explode? You're a real hero, Mr. Johnson." He smiled the way a man smiles when his teeth ache. "Just fixing what's broken," he said, again and again. By closing time, he was exhausted. When he locked the shop door, a bouquet of flowers leaned against the step, tied with a note, "To our town's guardian angel." He left it there. The next morning, Emma's school called. "Johnson," said the principal, "we'd like to hold a small ceremony. The children are excited." Emma told everyone about her brave dad. He hesitated. "I'd rather not." "Oh, come on, the local paper's covering it. Just a few minutes, a handshake, maybe a photo with the kids." I said no. His tone was sharper than intended. There was a pause. "I understand," the principal said softly. "But you should know." Emma looked proud. When the call ended, Marcus sat in silence, the weight of that word, proud, pressing down like lead. That evening, he drove to the grocery store. Cameras flashed before he even stepped out of the truck. 2 reporters hurried across the lot. "Mr. Johnson, how does it feel to save the CEO of Skytech? Did you know who she was when you rescued her? Will you be meeting her again?" Marcus tightened his jaw. "No comment." "Is it true she's offering a reward?" "No comment." "Mr. Johnson, just one photo." He got back into the truck and drove away, tires spitting gravel. The sound of the engine drowned out the pounding in his chest. At dinner, Emma chattered about school. "Everyone clapped for me, Daddy. Mrs. Ellis said, 'I'm brave just like you.'" He tried to smile. "That's nice, sweetheart. But why don't you like when people talk about it? Isn't it good to be brave?" He looked at her across the small kitchen table, the cheap light flickering overhead, the hum of the refrigerator filling the quiet. "Being brave doesn't always mean being happy," he said. She frowned, not understanding. "But you saved a life." He nodded. "And sometimes saving one life means remembering another you couldn't." Emma went quiet, eyes dropping to her plate. 2 days later, a TV van parked outside their cabin. Marcus spotted it from the window, the bright blue logo, the satellite dish spinning. A reporter in a crisp blazer rehearsed lines while the cameraman adjusted focus. Marcus stepped outside, keeping the door half closed behind him. Please leave, he said. Mr. Johnson, we just want a few words. No interviews. She smiled too easily. This is a good thing, sir. People love stories like yours. The nation needs heroes. Find another one. But don't you want to tell your side? She pressed, before someone else does. That line cut deeper than it should have. He stared at her, really stared, and something cold flickered behind his eyes. You think you already know my side, he said quietly. You just want a soundbite to fit the story you've already written. He closed the door before she could answer. For a while, Cedar Falls couldn't stop talking. Strangers left pies on the porch, gift cards in the mail. Kids rode their bikes past the cabin, waving. Every act of kindness felt like another spotlight shining where he didn't want light. Marcus started taking Emma to school earlier, before the parents arrived. He stopped going to church, stopped visiting the diner. Every smile felt like a question he didn't want to answer. At night, he'd stand by the lake where the wreckage had sunk, the water calm again, betraying no sign of fire or steel. Emma would sometimes join him, her small hand slipping into his. Do you think she's okay now? She'd ask. The woman from the plane, yeah. He looked across the still surface. I think so. Will we see her again? Marcus hesitated. I hope not. Why? Because if we do, he said quietly, it means the past isn't done with us yet. That night, as the crickets tuned their endless song, Marcus sat at his workbench. The lamplight spilled across scattered blueprints, his private sketches, designs for hydraulic systems that no one would ever see. He should have felt proud, he should have felt peace. Instead he felt exposed. For 7 years, he'd buried his name beneath ordinary life. Now it was on every channel, and if SkyTech looked close enough, if Catherine Morrison, or anyone from that world decided to dig, they would find him. And the truth would follow. Emma stirred in her sleep as thunder rolled outside. Marcus stood by her door, watching her small chest rise and fall. She looked like Sarah when she dreamed. Same calm, same furrowed brow. He whispered, you deserve quiet, baby. I'll keep it that way. Outside, lightning flashed over the lake, illuminating the silhouette of twisted metal, barely visible beneath the surface. The sky had fallen once, and if he wasn't careful, it would fall again. A week had passed since the crash, but the world hadn't stopped whispering. For Catherine Morrison, every headline felt like a ghost scratching at glass. CEO survives lake crash. SkyTech executive saved by local mechanic. Fate or fortune. The mystery of the man who dived into fire. She had seen her own pale face on the cover of half a dozen papers, oxygen mask pressed against her mouth, eyes half open, a man's hand steadying her head. His face was turned away from the camera, soaked and grim, but the caption had made him mythic. Marcus Johnson, 40, small-town mechanic, hero. Lying in the hospital bed, she'd memorized that name. The doctors said she owed her life to him. The board said she owed him silence. SkyTech's PR team had already written a statement, polished and hollow, thanking local emergency response efforts, but at night, when the morphine haze thinned, she remembered fragments, the cold water, the strong hands lifting her, the voice that said you're safe now. And she couldn't let that voice fade. The road to Cedar Falls twisted through pine and dust, the kind of drive where cell service died, and conscience got louder. Catherine sat in the back seat of a black SUV, sunglasses hiding the bruises still yellowing along her temple. Her assistant, Claire, scrolled through an iPad full of legal documents. The company lawyer sat beside her, rehearsing lines like a script. This visit should be cordial, efficient and closed, he said. You hand him the check. He signs the non-disclosure. You thank him, shake hands, and we leave. Catherine looked out the window. And if he doesn't sign? The lawyer frowned. Everyone signs when there's $50,000 on the table. She didn't answer. Marcus heard the car long before it appeared, a low hum breaking the peace of the woods. He was fixing the hinge on the porch door when the black SUV turned into the gravel drive, headlights slicing through the trees. Emma looked up from her sketchbook on the steps. Daddy, who's that? He wiped his hands on a rag. Not sure, sweetheart. Go inside, okay? The SUV stopped. The doors opened with corporate precision, lawyer first, assistant next, then her. For a second Marcus didn't recognize her. The hospital had scrubbed the soot from her skin, the lake had washed away the blood. In person Catherine Morrison looked like someone who belonged to another planet. Tailored coat, perfect hair, the kind of composure that came with money and consequences. But her eyes told a different story. He'd seen those eyes half open underwater, full of fear and fight. "Mr. Johnson?" she asked, stepping forward. He nodded once. "That's me." She offered her hand. "Catherine Morrison. You saved my life." He didn't take it. "Glad you made it." The lawyer cleared his throat, producing an envelope. "Miss Morrison wishes to express her gratitude in a tangible way. $50,000, as well as a formal letter of recognition." Marcus's gaze didn't waver. "I don't need money for doing what was right." Catherine blinked. "Please, it's not, I don't need it." He repeated, voice even but final. The lawyer looked offended, as if refusal were unpatriotic. "Mr. Johnson, this is a significant." Marcus turned slightly toward him. "You should leave." Catherine lifted a hand. "Wait, just give us a moment." The lawyer hesitated, then stepped back toward the SUV. The assistant followed. The air between them was suddenly quiet enough to hear the wind in the pines. Catherine studied him. The newspapers hadn't done him justice. He was taller than she expected, leaner, sun-worn, with eyes that seemed to hold too much history. His hands, scarred, steady, rested on the railing of the porch like anchors. "I wanted to thank you in person," she said. "You risked your life. I don't know how to repay that." "You just did," he said. She smiled faintly. "You're not making this easy." "Didn't ask to be easy." Silence lingered. A woodpecker tapped somewhere in the trees. Her gaze drifted past him to the porch wall, where a large drafting table stood beneath the window. Pinned above it were sheets of paper, blueprints, complex and elegant lines of geometry drawn with an engineer's precision. "You draw aircraft?" she asked, before she could stop herself. Marcus followed her eyes. "Old habits. Those aren't hobby sketches," she said quietly. "That's high-level aeronautical design." He shrugged. "Just something to keep my hands busy." Catherine stepped closer, instinct overriding manners. "Is that a hydraulic redundancy system?" "That layout, it's cleaner than what most companies are using right now." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I fix what's broken, that's all." She looked at him differently then, not as the man who saved her, but as someone who'd walked away from something greater. Before she could ask more, a small voice came from behind the door. "Daddy, is it okay if I come out?" Marcus turned. "Yeah, baby, come say hello." Emma stepped onto the porch, shy but curious. Her curls framed her brown face, her t-shirt smudged with crayon marks. She looked up at Catherine with wide, solemn eyes. "This is Miss Morrison," Marcus said gently. "The lady from the lake." Emma's eyes widened. "You're the one Daddy saved." Catherine knelt, smiling softly. "I suppose I am, and I owe both of you more than I can ever say." Emma tilted her head. "Daddy says people shouldn't owe for doing the right thing." Catherine laughed, surprised by the sting of truth in the child's voice. "Your dad sounds like a good man." "The best," Emma said proudly. Marcus cleared his throat. "Okay kiddo, why don't you go wash up before dinner?" When Emma disappeared inside, the silence returned, but now it carried something fragile, almost human. "She's lovely," Catherine said. "Looks like her mother." The words hit harder than she intended. Marcus's face changed, not angry, just distant. "You should go now." Catherine hesitated. "I didn't mean." "It's fine," he said, though it wasn't. She opened her purse, pulled out a card, and set it on the porch railing. "If you ever change your mind about the money, or anything, call me." He didn't look at it. Catherine lingered for a heartbeat longer, then turned toward the car. As she reached the door, curiosity won over decorum. "Mr. Johnson," she said softly, "why won't you let anyone thank you?" He looked up at the sky, pale and cloudless. "Because thanks come with attention. And attention comes with questions." She frowned. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that dig up things better left buried." Catherine watched him for a moment longer, then stepped into the SUV. The door closed with a soft final click, the engine rumbled, gravel crunched, and the car disappeared down the winding road. On the drive back to the city, the lawyer spoke without looking up. "A strange man, that one. Proud, suspicious." Catherine didn't respond. Her thoughts were still back at the cabin, the blueprints on the wall, the scar on his hand, the quiet ache in his eyes. When the lawyer finally said, "At least that's the end of it," she whispered under her breath, "No, it's just beginning." That night, in her penthouse overlooking the skyline, Catherine poured herself a glass of water she didn't drink. The city lights flickered like static. She sat at her desk, typed Marcus Johnson, Cedar Falls into her private terminal, and stared at the empty search results. No social media, no professional record, no trace before 7 years ago. She leaned back, the silence in the room growing heavy. Somewhere deep down, beneath the corporate armor and survivor's guilt, something unsettled had begun to move. She didn't know it yet, but the man who had saved her life was the same man her father had destroyed. The office at SkyTech headquarters smelled like new money and old secrets. 52 floors above the city, glass walls shimmered with morning sun, turning everything gold and hollow. Catherine Morrison sat behind her desk, staring at the skyline she used to find inspiring. Now all she could see were ghosts hiding behind the light. She should have been working, signing contracts, preparing for the quarterly board review, but she couldn't stop thinking about the man by the lake. His eyes, the quiet steel in his voice. When he said some things are better left buried. What could someone like that possibly have to hide? Her assistant, Claire, knocked softly. "Miss Morrison, legal says your father's archive requests are still pending." Catherine blinked. "Archive requests? For the legacy audit," Claire said. "You asked to review your father's communications from before his retirement. It says it'll take a week." Catherine frowned. "I never made that request." Claire hesitated. "Then someone else did, but it's under your access code." A small chill crept up her spine. That night, long after everyone else had left, Catherine walked through the executive floor barefoot, the echo of her heels replaced by the whisper of memory. Her father's old office still smelled faintly of cedar polish and ambition. The gold nameplate, Richard L. Morrison, founder and CEO, gleamed on the door like a gravestone. She unlocked it with her keycard and stepped inside. The room was a museum. Framed newspaper clippings lined the walls. SkyTech redefines safety standards. The Morrison model, engineering tomorrow. Beneath the glass, there were awards, citations, letters from governors. But on the desk, a single photo in a leather frame caught her breath. Her father, smiling beside a man she didn't recognize at first. Then she saw the name tag, Marcus Johnson, lead engineer. Her stomach turned. The air seemed to thin around her. She sat down at the desk, flicked on the computer, and typed her administrator login. The system booted with a quiet hum. Files filled the screen, years of internal reports, test data, and emails. She searched Marcus Johnson. Hundreds of results appeared. Most were sterile, performance reviews, design memos, but buried among them were attachments labeled incident reports, hydraulic tests, and one folder marked confidential. Do not distribute. She opened it. The first document was a safety summary dated 8 years ago. Marcus's signature was at the bottom of the test approval form, but something was off. The digital timestamp showed the file had been signed 2 days after the crash. Catherine leaned closer, heart thudding. That's impossible. She opened another, an email chain between Marcus, the engineering division, and her father. From Marcus Johnson to Richard Morrison. Subject, hydraulic system. Immediate concern, sir. I'm urging you again to suspend the SX700 test. Pressure readings are unstable. A catastrophic failure is likely. Please review attached data logs. We cannot proceed safely. Then beneath it, from Richard Morrison to Marcus Johnson. Thank you for your concern. Proceed as planned. The board has confidence in your design. And then, nothing. The chain ended there. No reply, no follow-up. Catherine felt something cold bloom in her chest. She checked the metadata. The last modified date was the day after the crash. Someone had edited the file. She scrolled down further, scanning archived communications. One by one, the emails began to vanish into the void. Whole threads deleted. Attachments replaced with blank placeholders. Who erased these? She whispered. Her voice echoed in the empty office. The next morning, she met with IT. I need access to the pre-2018 backup server, she said. The technician blinked. Those drives are cold storage, ma'am. archived at the offsite facility. Then thaw them, she said. Now, he hesitated. Miss Morrison, those archives were sealed by your father's authorization. Access requires board clearance. She crossed her arms. I'm the CEO, I am the board. The technician swallowed hard. Yes, ma'am. 2 days later, she sat in a dim data lab at Skytech's offsite server vault, surrounded by rows of blinking machines. A restored directory opened on the monitor, 2016 to 28, executive emails. She typed again, Marcus Johnson. This time, the results were endless. She opened the first unread message, from Marcus Johnson to r.morrison@skytechaviation.com. Subject, urgent, SX-700 test flight Mr. Morrison, please reconsider. The redundancy system is flawed. There's a 40% risk of catastrophic hydraulic failure. I'm begging you to postpone until we fix it. This is not about pride, it's about lives. Then another, Mr. Morrison, I can't sign the final clearance. Someone has appended my digital approval without my consent. Please investigate immediately. And finally, the one that broke her. From Marcus Johnson to Richard Morrison. Subject, please sir Mr. Morrison, my wife is one of the pilots scheduled for the test. I am begging you man to man, don't let her fly tomorrow. Something will go wrong. If you won't stop it for me, do it for her. The timestamp read, sent 48 hours before the crash. The message had been read, but never replied to. Catherine's vision blurred, her hand trembled on the mouse. Her father had seen this, he'd known. She leaned back, pressing a hand to her mouth. The room seemed to tilt. She had always believed her father was ruthless but moral, that his ambition was built on brilliance, not deceit. But this was execution dressed as leadership. She searched again, opening a final folder labeled Internal Inquiry, 28. Inside was a summary prepared by the legal department. Recommendation, terminate M. Johnson for negligence. Fabricate documentation, confirming his approval of flight readiness. Seal records, NDA for staff involved. The signature at the bottom was unmistakable. R. Morrison. Her breath caught in her throat. Her father hadn't just ignored Marcus's warnings, he had destroyed him to save himself. By midnight, she was still sitting there, surrounded by the dim hum of servers and the faint metallic chill of betrayal. She scrolled one last time through the emails, her finger trembling over the mouse. Marcus's words stared back at her. Someone will die if you fly tomorrow. She closed her eyes. Sarah Johnson, Emma's mother. The test pilot her father's greed had killed. The next day, Catherine called her old mentor, Tom Brennan, the retired supervisor Marcus had once reported to. He answered on the third ring, his voice a gravelly sigh. Katie Morrison. Haven't heard that name in a long time. I need to ask you about Marcus Johnson, she said. A long silence. Then quietly, that man deserved better than what he got. Tell me what really happened, Tom. I can't. You can. I'm not my father. He laughed bitterly. You think that makes a difference? The truth nearly buried me once already. Please, she said. I found his emails. I know my father ignored his warnings. Another pause. Then you also know your father made us destroy everything that proved it. We all signed NDAs. He said it was to protect the company. But it wasn't. It was to protect himself. Did he forge Marcus's signature? Yes, the word landed like a verdict. He told us it was for the greater good, Tom whispered. He said Marcus had lost perspective, that personal tragedy makes bad engineers. We believed him. God help us, we believed him. Catherine closed her eyes. Why didn't anyone speak up? Tom's voice cracked. Because the ones who didn't stay long. When the call ended, Catherine sat motionless at her desk, the city spread beneath her like circuitry. Her father's empire glittered in the dark, built on silence, powered by blood. She could bury it all again. No one else knew what she'd found. She could issue a settlement to Marcus, protect Skytech's legacy, protect the Morrison name. But the image of that little girl on the porch wouldn't leave her. Emma's soft voice echoing. Daddy says people shouldn't die for doing the right thing. Catherine's throat tightened. If she stayed silent, she'd become her father. And if she spoke, she'd destroy everything he'd built. She looked at her reflection in the office window. The same sharp eyes, the same jawline, the same blood. Then she whispered to the empty room, maybe it's time the sky came clean. The rain came first, thin, uncertain, like the sky was still deciding whether to weep. By the time it reached Cedar Falls, the storm had a voice of its own, whispering through every crack in Marcus's old cabin. Inside, he sat at the kitchen table, a half-finished model airplane before him, Emma asleep in the next room. The quiet was deceptive. He'd felt it all day, the pressure drop before bad weather, the way the world holds its breath before breaking. Then came the knock. He opened the door to Tom Brennan, soaked, face pale. "Marcus, you need to turn on the TV." The screen flickered to life, static giving way to a smiling anchor. Tonight, exclusive revelations about the so-called hero of Cedar Falls. New documents show Marcus Johnson was the engineer responsible for the Skytech test flight disaster 7 years ago. Marcus's blood went cold. Photos flashed, his old employee badge, Sarah's test crew portrait, a headline resurrected from hell. Engineer's negligence, blamed in fatal Skytech crash. Tom looked away. "I don't know how they got that file, but they're saying you falsified safety reports, that you let it happen." Marcus barely heard him. The room spun. On screen the anchor's voice cut like metal. Sources inside Skytech confirm the company is re-examining Johnson's past, raising the question, did he sabotage the CEO's jet to seek revenge? Marcus turned off the TV. The silence roared. By morning the storm outside had nothing on the one inside town. The grocery clerk, who used to wave at him, looked away. The mechanic down the road refused to sell him parts. A mother pulled her child closer when Marcus passed. Emma heard it first at school. "Your dad's a killer," a boy hissed. "My mom says he crashed planes. Bet he'll crash your car next." She ran home crying. Marcus met her at the door, heartbreaking at the sight of her rain-soaked hair and trembling lips. "Why are they saying that, Daddy?" He knelt, pulling her close. "Because people believe what's loud, not what's true." "But, you didn't do anything wrong." He wanted to tell her she was right. Instead he whispered, "Sometimes it takes time for the sky to clear." That evening, headlights pierced the storm again. A black sedan stopped at the gate. Catherine Morrison stepped out without an umbrella, rain flattening her hair, soaking her coat. Marcus met her halfway down the drive, his face shadowed by lightning. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "I had to come." Her voice trembled. "The leak, it wasn't me. I swear to God. You expect me to believe that?" "I was trying to make it right, Marcus. Someone inside, maybe legal, maybe at T. They found out what I was digging into." His jaw tightened. "Well, congratulations. You got what you wanted. Now I'm a headline again. That's not fair." "No?" He laughed, harsh. "Because of you my daughter's being called a liar. We can't even buy groceries. You have no idea." "I do," she snapped. "Because my board just voted emergency session. They think I leaked the documents myself. My career's burning down the same way yours did." For a moment thunder filled the space between them. Then quieter. "You're not the only one paying for his sins." Marcus looked away, rain streaming down his face. It wasn't clear which drops were tears. A crash from inside the cabin. Emma's voice, small and terrified. "Daddy," Marcus ran, slipping on the wet porch. Emma was on the floor clutching her chest, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "Emma, look at me, look at me." He gathered her into his arms. Her lips had turned gray. Kate was right behind him. "What's happening?" "Heart condition," he panted. "Congenital, stress makes it worse." Her eyes widened. "Get her in the car. Now." The drive through the storm was a blur of flashing lightning and screaming wind. Water sheeted across the windshield, the wipers couldn't keep up. "Stay with me, baby," Marcus whispered from the back seat, Emma's head against his chest. "Breathe with me, in out." Kate gripped the wheel, knuckles white. "How far to the hospital?" 15 miles. A branch crashed across the road ahead. She swerved, tires skidding, engine whining. For a second the car hydroplaned, then caught traction again. "Don't you quit on me now," Marcus muttered to the storm itself. At the hospital, doctors rushed Emma away on a gurney. Marcus and Kate stood dripping in the fluorescent light, watching doors swing closed. Hours bled together. Marcus paced the hallway, soaked through, muttering prayers to no one. Kate sat motionless, replaying every decision that had led them here. Finally a doctor appeared. She's stable, he said softly, but she needs rest, and she needs peace. Marcus sank into a chair, head in his hands. Kate knelt beside him. I'm so sorry, she whispered. He looked up slowly. You can't fix this with money, or PR, or an apology. I know. Then why are you still here? Because I found proof, she said. Everything you tried to tell them, the warnings, the forged signature, it's all in the backup servers. Your wife, she didn't die because of you. Marcus's breath hitched. I was going to give it to the board quietly, Kate continued, voice trembling, but now the world's already watching. If we don't speak first, they'll write the story for us. He stared at her for a long time, the stormlight flickering over both their faces. Then we tell them, he said finally, all of it. Are you sure? He glanced toward the door where Emma slept. I've spent 7 years hiding. Maybe it's time to stop. Outside the storm began to break. The rain softened, the wind slowed, but thunder still rumbled on the horizon, like a warning, or a promise. Tomorrow the world would know the truth, and nothing, not the sky, not the past, not even forgiveness, would ever look the same again. Morning broke gray and brittle over the city, like the sky itself had forgotten how to breathe. In the corner of the hospital waiting room, Marcus sat with a cup of cold coffee in his hands, staring at the rain-streaked window. Beyond the glass, traffic glimmered, distant and unreal. Emma was asleep in her room, small and pale but stable. Every rise of her chest felt like a reprieve. Across the hallway, Catherine Morrison stood by a vending machine, her reflection caught between fluorescent lights and exhaustion. She hadn't slept in 36 hours. The storm had quieted, but inside her, another one raged. Her phone buzzed. Claire's voice trembled on the other end. Kate, there's no going back. The leak's gone viral. Investors are panicking. The board called an emergency meeting. They want your resignation. Kate's throat was dry. Then they'll have it. Kate, I'm done pretending. Prepare the press room for noon, and make sure there's a second podium. For who? For the man they tried to erase. By midday the SkyTech headquarters gleamed like glass under bruised clouds. Reporters flooded the marble atrium, cameras, microphones, the low hum of anticipation. On stage 2 podiums stood side by side. One bore the SkyTech logo, the other was unmarked. Kate stood behind the curtain, adjusting the microphone, her pulse roaring in her ears. Marcus stood a few feet away, wearing his only clean shirt, expression unreadable. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. Yes I do, he replied. For Sarah, for Emma, for everyone they lied to. She looked at him then, not as a CEO, not as the daughter of a guilty man, but as someone about to burn the same world that raised her. Once we say it, she whispered, we can't take it back. Marcus's eyes didn't waver. Good. The crowd noise swelled as the cameras went live. Kate stepped forward first. Flash bulbs strobed across her face. Thank you for coming, she began, voice steady but taut. What I'm about to say will change this company forever. Murmurs rippled through the room. She glanced at Marcus, then continued. 7 years ago, SkyTech Aviation experienced a fatal crash that took 4 lives, including Sarah Johnson, test pilot, mother and wife to the man standing beside me. Marcus lifted his head, meeting the crowd's collective gaze. Kate's voice didn't shake. Our official investigation blamed Mr. Johnson. We said he failed to report a design flaw. We called him negligent. That was a lie. Gasps scattered through the reporters. Kate clicked a remote. The screen behind her came alive. Emails, timestamps, digital signatures, Marcus's warnings, his pleas, his forged approval. My father, Richard Morrison, knew about the defect. He ignored it. He ordered Marcus's signature falsified. He silenced everyone who spoke up. The flashes came faster now, the noise like rain on glass. I believed in my father, Kate said softly, but belief doesn't change the truth. And the truth is that Marcus Johnson tried to save lives while we destroyed his. Marcus stepped to the second podium. His voice carried a quiet gravity that silenced the room. I warned them, he said simply. I begged them to stop the flight. My wife Sarah volunteered that day because she trusted SkyTech. She trusted us. He paused, letting the stillness breathe. When she died they told me it was my fault. They took everything. My job, my name, my daughter's peace. But I never stopped knowing what was real. He looked straight into the cameras. This isn't revenge. It's what truth sounds like when it finally stops being afraid. Questions erupted, shouted over one another. What happens to SkyTech now? Will there be criminal charges? Miss Morrison, are you resigning? Kate raised a hand. Yes, effective immediately. The room froze. I'm resigning not in disgrace but in responsibility, because silence is also a choice. My father built an empire out of innovation. I intend to rebuild it out of honesty. She stepped away from the podium. Marcus stayed still, the stormlight glinting off his eyes. By evening the story had eclipsed everything. SkyTech scandal rocks aerospace industry. CEO admits cover-up, engineer, exonerated. After 7 years, the company's stock plummeted. Commentators speculated about lawsuits, congressional hearings, redemption arcs. But Marcus ignored the noise. He was back at the hospital, sitting by Emma's bedside, her small hand wrapped around his. She stirred, whispering, "Daddy," he smiled, weary but real. "It's over, sweetheart. The truth's out." Her brow furrowed. "Does that mean Mommy's not mad anymore?" He swallowed hard. "No, baby. Mommy's proud now." Emma's fingers squeezed his. "Then I am too." The next morning, Kate walked out of the SkyTech tower for the last time. Cameras followed, questions chased her steps, but she didn't look back. She found Marcus waiting by the curb, hands in his pockets. "You didn't have to give up your life for mine," he said. "I didn't," she replied. "I gave it up for hers, for Sarah." They stood there for a while, watching dawn bleed through the clouds. "She deserved better," Marcus said quietly. "So did you." He looked at her, eyes softer now. "You know, when I pulled you out of that lake I thought fate was cruel. Now I'm not so sure. Maybe it was mercy," she said. For the first time in years he allowed himself to believe it. Across town, the world kept spinning. Reporters dissected the scandal, lawyers drafted statements, politicians promised reforms. But in one small hospital room, a father and daughter watched the sun crawl over the horizon, golden and clean. The storm had broken, and for the first time the sky felt honest. 6 months later, Cedar Falls was in bloom. Spring light spilled across the lake, the same lake that had once burned and screamed, now glassy and calm, carrying the sound of laughter from the far bank. Marcus Johnson stood before a brand new glass building that caught the morning sun like a second dawn. The sign above the door read, "Sarah Johnson Center for Aerospace Safety." Inside, the air smelled of sawdust and new beginnings. Engineers in denim jackets and rolled sleeves arranged chairs beneath a banner that read "Opening Ceremony." News crews milled quietly, subdued, respectful. Marcus adjusted his tie, a loaner from the mayor, and took a deep breath. Emma, now stronger, her cheeks full of color again, held his hand and grinned up at him. "Ready, Daddy, as I'll ever be," he said. The ceremony was small but alive with meaning. Former engineers, local mechanics, even students from the nearby technical college gathered in folding chairs. At the front row sat the families of the other crash victims, faces time had not erased, only softened. Kate Morrison stood beside the podium, dressed simply, her hair wind-tossed. She no longer wore the armor of corporate polish. When she spoke, her voice carried the calm of someone who had survived her own reckoning. "This center," she said, "exists so that no one ever has to choose between honesty and their job again. It belongs to the men and women who build the machines that touch the sky, and to those we lost when truth was silenced." Her eyes found Marcus. One man refused that silence. "Today we honor him not with pity, but with partnership." Applause rose, gentle, sincere. Marcus stepped forward, the crowd parting like tide water. He looked out at them, faces new and familiar, each one waiting for the kind of words he'd spent years holding inside. "I used to think the sky was cruel," he began, "that it takes what it wants and leaves you to wonder why. But I learned something out there, under the wreckage, under the lies. The sky isn't cruel, it's honest. It gives back exactly what you build into it." He paused, eyes glistening. "We built fear once, now we build truth." He turned to Emma, who beamed like sunlight through glass. "And we build for them, the ones who believed we could do better." He nodded toward the photo unveiled on the wall, Sarah in her test pilot suit, smile frozen mid-laugh. A bronze plaque beneath read, "For those who rose for progress and for those who refused to let them fall in vain." After the speeches, people lingered, reporters asked for quotes, students asked for advice. Marcus shook hands, smiled, answered when he could. but when the last camera left, he slipped away to the lobby, where the sunlight framed Sarah's portrait. He stood there a long time, tracing the lines of her face. "You were right, Sarah," he whispered. "Doing what's right isn't supposed to be easy." Behind him a soft voice said, "You did it anyway." Kate stood there, holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one. "I thought you'd left," he said. "I did," she replied. "Consulting for independent flight safety projects now. Less power, better sleep." He smiled faintly. "That sounds like a good trade." "I hope so." She hesitated. "How's Emma?" "Strong," he said. "She wants to be an engineer." Kate laughed. "Like her father, like her mother," he said quietly. "But maybe both." They walked outside together. The air smelled of wet grass and jet fuel from the nearby test field, life and legacy intertwined. "You know," Kate said, watching children run by, "my father used to say the sky forgives nothing." Marcus looked upward, squinting at the open blue. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe it just waits for us to make peace with ourselves. A gust of wind swept between them, carrying the sound of distant laughter from Emma and the other children touring the lab. For a long moment, neither spoke. The world felt weightless again. That evening, Marcus drove home through golden light. The road curved along the edge of the lake, where the water mirrored the sky so perfectly it was impossible to tell which was which. Emma sat in the back seat, sketching a design in her notebook, wings, turbines, equations half-formed in childish scrawl. "What's that?" he asked. "My project," she said proudly. "A plane that can't crash." He chuckled softly. "That's quite the dream." She looked up at him in the mirror, her smile wide. "Didn't you say all good things start with a dream?" He nodded, the ache in his chest turning to warmth. "Yeah, I did." That night, after Emma fell asleep, Marcus sat at his workbench. The lamp cast a circle of amber over clean sheets of paper. He picked up his pencil, drew a single line, then another, slow, deliberate, free. Outside, crickets sang. Somewhere far away, a jet hummed across the stars. On the table lay 3 things: Sarah's photograph, Emma's drawing, and a blank blueprint waiting to become something new. Marcus looked at the photograph one last time. "We can't change what happened," he murmured, "but we can make sure it never happens again." He began to draw, the same hands that once pulled a woman from fire, now shaping a future from forgiveness. The wind brushed through the open window, stirring the papers, lifting one into the air like a bird testing its wings. He didn't chase it, he just watched it rise, flutter and disappear into the night. The sky at last had learned to heal. 15 years later, the world had learned to listen to its engineers. The Sarah Johnson Center for Aerospace Safety had become a beacon in the industry, its glass walls reflected in aviation textbooks, its research quoted in universities, its graduates scattered across every sky from Houston to Tokyo. And on a bright June morning, the center's atrium was alive again, filled with the hum of voices, applause, and the slow sweep of camera cranes capturing history. Emma Johnson stood at the podium. 23 years old now, sharp-featured and radiant, she wore her late mother's silver wing pin on her lapel. Behind her a banner hung from the ceiling, the Emma Johnson Memorial Scholarship for Ethical Engineering. She looked out over the crowd, executives, pilots, professors, students, but her eyes found 2 faces in the front row that made her breath hitch. Marcus, older now, his hair silver at the temples, and beside him, Catherine Morrison, smiling quietly, hands folded in her lap. Emma took a breath and began. "My mother believed the sky could make us better. My father taught me it can also break us if we forget who we are." She paused, her voice steady but soft. "When I was 8, my dad saved someone's life, and lost everything for it. When I was 9, the world learned the truth. And when I was 10, he taught me the difference between being a hero and being honest." The room was silent, even the camera shutters seemed to hesitate. "He used to say," Emma continued, "the cost of silence is always higher than the cost of truth. I didn't understand that when I was little, but now, standing here in the place that bears my mother's name, I do." She smiled, a flash of Sarah's warmth and Marcus's gravity in one. "We build planes to fly, but we build integrity to keep them flying. The next time you design something that carries a life, remember, it's not the sky that holds them up, it's you." Applause rose slowly, then thundered. Some in the crowd wiped tears. Marcus didn't move. He just watched, eyes bright and unblinking, as his daughter carried both her parents' voices into the world. After the ceremony, the crowd dispersed into clusters of handshakes and interviews. Marcus slipped outside, needing air. The courtyard was filled with sunlight, the breeze heavy with the scent of wild clover. He sat on a bench beneath the memorial statue, a bronze rendering of 4 figures reaching skyward. Sarah, her fellow test pilots, and a faceless engineer behind them, hands lifted as if supporting the air itself. He'd never told anyone, but that last figure had been modeled after him. Kate had insisted. He smiled faintly, tracing the name etched into the base. Sarah Johnson, she flew for truth. Beautiful ceremony, a voice said behind him. He turned. Kate stood there, the years kind to her, the lines on her face earned rather than aged. She wore no title now, just a linen dress, and a quiet dignity. She's remarkable, Kate said, nodding toward the doors where Emma laughed with a cluster of interns. Marcus's gaze softened. She's everything her mother dreamed she'd be, and everything her father fought for, Kate added. He chuckled. You sound like someone who finally learned how to give compliments. I'm still practicing. They sat in silence for a moment, the sound of wind sweeping through the memorial trees. Kate spoke again, quieter. Do you ever regret it? The press conference, the fallout. Marcus leaned back, watching a jet trace a perfect white arc across the blue. Regret, he said, sometimes. But then I see that. He nodded toward Emma, who was now kneeling beside a group of children visiting the center, showing them how to fold paper planes. That's what truth builds when you stop being afraid of it. Kate smiled. Your legacy runs deeper than you think. He glanced at her. So does yours. You could have walked away. I tried, she said. But the sky has a long memory. Later that evening, after the crowd thinned and the last of the cameras had left, Emma found them both by the lake behind the center. The water shimmered gold, calm and endless. Mom used to bring you here, didn't she? She asked her father. He nodded. Every test flight day, said it helped her remember the ground before she left it. Emma smiled, brushing her fingers across the surface. Then maybe that's why I like it too. Kate joined them, watching as Emma pulled a small object from her pocket, a folded blueprint, its edges worn soft. What's that? Kate asked. Emma handed it to her father. My design project, a new flight recorder system, one that can't be tampered with or erased. Marcus's breath caught. The title at the top read, Project Read Light, dedicated to Sarah and the voices that warned us. He looked at her, pride and disbelief warring in his chest. It's beautiful, he said. It's exactly what this world needs. Emma grinned. Then it's a good thing you taught me how to listen. As the sun dipped below the tree line, the 3 of them stood together at the water's edge. Somewhere above, a commercial jet climbed through the clouds, its engines humming a steady, reassuring tone. Kate shaded her eyes. You ever wonder where she'd be now? Marcus didn't answer right away. Maybe right there, he said finally, pointing to the sky. Not watching over us, but watching us keep going. They stood in silence as the plane vanished into light. And for a moment just a heartbeat, the reflection on the lake looked like wings opening wide. Marcus closed his eyes, letting the wind carry the sound away. Behind him, his daughter's laughter rose again, bright and unburdened. Ahead, the horizon glowed like something newly born. The past had fallen, yes, but the sky remembered, and it forgave.